Rejected but remembered. Why the avoidant miss you now. Let me tell you something that might sting a little, but it's the truth. You were rejected. You felt tossed aside. Like your love was too much, your presence too available, your effort too exhausting for someone who couldn't or wouldn't meet you halfway. But now, suddenly, they're showing signs. Subtle reach outs, a like here, a message there. Apart from them, that's why they're not in a good mood and feel trick story that feels like it's about you. And you're wondering, why now? Here's the truth. They miss you, not because they've changed, not because they're suddenly capable of giving you what you deserved all along, but because avoidance isn't absence of emotion. It's fear wrapped in ego, disguised as control. See, avoidant people often don't realize what they had until it's no longer chasing them. When you finally stopped reaching out, they were left with silence. And in that silence, something dangerous happened. They had to sit with themselves. They remember the comfort, the validation, the emotional home you offered. You became a mirror to their own emptiness, and now they want that warmth back. But remember this, missing someone is not the same as choosing them, and if someone only wants you when they feel safe from the risk of emotional depth, that's not love. You are not too much. You are just right for someone emotionally ready. But your readiness scared them. So here's what you do. You acknowledge their absence. You see their return. And then you protect your peace. Because you don't need to prove your worth to someone who only values it in hindsight. Let them miss you. Let them romanticize you. But you keep moving forward. Because healing is not about getting them back. It's about getting back to yourself. Avoidant individuals are often misunderstood. It's easy to assume they don't care, that their distance means detachment, or that their silence equates to emotional indifference. But that's not the full picture. Avoidants do feel, often deeply, but the difference lies in how they process and respond to those emotions. What looks like coldness is often self-protection. What seems like indifference is frequently fear. The root of avoidant behavior is a deep discomfort with emotional closeness, a reflex to retreat when intimacy threatens their internal sense of safety. Many avoidants grew up in environments where emotional expression wasn't modeled or welcomed. Vulnerability may have been punished, ignored, or even ridiculed. Over time, they learned that needing someone or depending on another was risky. So now, even when they genuinely like or even love someone, the emotional intent that comes with a close connection feels overwhelming. They may start to withdraw just as things become real, not because the person they're with is wrong for them, but because closeness activates old survival patterns. This creates a painful paradox. On the one hand, the avoidant longs for connection, just like anyone else. On the other hand, they fear the very intimacy they crave. So when they meet someone who is emotionally available, consistent, and secure, someone like you, they're drawn in but also triggered. They might initially be charmed by your warmth, your openness, your ability to communicate your feelings. But the closer you get, the more unsafe it feels to them on a subconscious level. That's when the walls go up. That's when they start to push you away. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your emotional availability exposes their own emotional limitations. When you were with them, your presence acted like a spotlight on the very parts of themselves they've spent a lifetime avoiding. And for someone who doesn't know how to sit in discomfort or navigate healthy vulnerability, that's terrifying. So they reject you, not out of cruelty, but out of defense. It's a way of protecting their internal world, even if it means losing something good in the process. What's ironic is that your stability, your consistency, the very things that made you a safe space, those are the things they now remember most. Because once the safety is gone, it becomes unmistakable. But make no mistake, it wasn't that they didn't feel, it's that they didn't feel safe enough to stay. When someone pulls away from you, it's easy to internalize that experience as a reflection of your worth. You might find yourself replaying conversations, second-guessing your expressions of love, and wondering if you came on too strong. But being too much is a narrative that often emerges when you're dealing with someone who isn't equipped to handle real emotional intimacy. It's not that your depth, affection, or presence was excessive, it's that they were never ready to meet you there. The problem wasn't the amount of love you gave, it was their capacity to receive it. People who struggle with avoidant tendencies often feel safest when things stay on the surface. They're most comfortable in dynamics where they don't have to risk emotional exposure. So when they meet someone who shows up with openness, consistency, and a willingness to be seen, it can feel like a threat. Not because you're dangerous, but because your emotional availability shines a light on what they haven't yet developed in themselves. Your too much is often just more than they're used to. More honesty, more care, more presence. And for someone unprepared to handle real emotional accountability, that can feel overwhelming. So instead of rising to meet your energy, they shrink, they pull back, shut down, or disappear entirely. And then you're left with a hollow silence and a heavy heart, wondering what you could have done differently. But the truth is, someone who's emotionally ready will never see your love as a burden. They won't confuse your vulnerability for weakness or your emotional expression for instability. They'll recognize that being able to love deeply and express it clearly is not a flaw, it's a strength. The rejection wasn't personal, even though it felt incredibly personal. It was a reflection of where they were emotionally, not a verdict on your character. Some people will only be comfortable with you when you're diluted, when you tone down your truth, mute your needs, or pretend you're okay with less than you deserve. But that kind of shrinking doesn't serve anyone, especially not you. So understand this, if someone turned away from your love, it wasn't because you were too much. It was because they weren't ready for what being with you required. Your emotional depth asked them to rise, and they weren't prepared to grow. That doesn't mean you should shrink. It means you should hold out for someone who says, finally, someone who meets me where I want to go. When you finally stop reaching out to someone who has been emotionally unavailable, it does something they never expected. It creates space. And for the avoidant, that space is both unfamiliar and unsettling. You might think your silence would go unnoticed, that your absence wouldn't matter to someone who seemed indifferent when they had you. But here's what's really happening. The very moment you remove your energy, they begin to feel the shift. Because whether they admitted it or not, your presence was a source of comfort. You were consistent, you were there. And when you disappear, that steady current of validation and emotional grounding disappears with you. Avoidants don't always understand their emotional patterns while they're in them. They may rationalize their detachment as independence or self-preservation, but what they often don't realize is how dependent they've quietly become on the emotional nourishment someone like you provides. You weren't just someone in their life. You were someone who made them feel safe, even when they couldn't name that feeling. And when you go quiet, when you stop checking in, when you resist the urge to bridge the distance they created, something significant happens. They're left alone with themselves. That space where your love used to be doesn't stay empty. It echoes. It forces them to sit with questions they've avoided. Why does it feel like something's missing? Why does it suddenly feel quieter, colder? Why can't they stop thinking about you? The irony is that they often needed the silence to recognize what your presence truly meant. It's not that they didn't value you. It's that they didn't know how to value someone who didn't require them to chase or perform. You simply showed up consistently and openly, and that scared them. Now that your energy's gone, they're no longer reacting to you, they're reacting to the absence of you. That's when the missing you starts to creep in, not necessarily out of clarity or growth, but out of discomfort, out of emotional withdrawal, out of the realization that they had something safe and genuine and they didn't know how to hold on to it. Silence makes your worth louder. What they miss isn't just you, it's how they felt when they were around you. The peace, the affection, the reflection of who they were when you believed in them. But the key is, they didn't miss you while they had you. They only began to when they no longer had access to what you gave so freely. It's tempting to believe that someone missing you means they've changed. That the person who once rejected you has had a realization, an awakening, and is now ready to love you the way you always hoped they would. But missing you and being ready for you are two entirely different things. One is emotional, the other is behavioral. One is based on longing, the other requires growth, effort, and accountability. Just because someone feels the loss of you doesn't mean they know how or are willing to show up differently. People miss things for many reasons. They miss comfort, they miss routine, they miss the way you made them feel about themselves. But that doesn't automatically mean they miss you in a way that's rooted in respect, commitment, or readiness. Missing someone can be an emotional reflex, not a sign of maturity. It often arises from emptiness, from the absence of validation, from suddenly having to face life without the emotional stability someone else provided. And that's what avoidants often respond to, the shift in how they feel, not in who you are. It's easy to romanticize the idea of being missed. It's validating to hear that someone who let you go is now thinking about you, dreaming about you, regretting their choices. But that validation can become a trap if it convinces you to accept breadcrumbs when you once offered the whole loaf. If someone comes back into your life simply because they're lonely or uncomfortable, not because they've done the inner work to be a better partner, then nothing has truly changed. The pattern will repeat, the affection will be temporary, and the same fears that caused them to run will still be there just beneath the surface. When someone genuinely deserves a place in your life again, they won't just say they miss you. They'll show you with consistency, with changed behavior, with emotional presence. They won't just reach out in moments of nostalgia or weakness. They'll step forward with clarity, not confusion. Until that happens, the fact that they miss you should be noted, but not used as a reason to reopen a door that led to your pain. Feeling missed can be powerful, but being chosen is what matters. Being chosen fully and freely by someone who is now emotionally equipped to hold what you offer, that's the difference between returning to what hurt and moving toward what heals. Missing you is not a ticket back into your life. It's just a sign that if they finally noticed what they lost, when someone who once rejected you starts showing signs of interest again, it can trigger a powerful emotional pull. You remember the connection, the hope, the almosts. And part of you wonders if maybe, just maybe, this time it could be different. That's human. But healing doesn't mean proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it before. It means recognizing that your value was never the issue, and protecting your peace means not re-entering spaces that once made you question it. The urge to go back is real. It's fueled by unfinished conversations, unresolved feelings, and the fantasy of closure. But often, what we're seeking isn't the person. We're seeking the version of ourselves we were when we still believed in what could have been. There's a part of you that still wants validation, that still wonders if walking away made you give up too soon. But healing teaches you this: walking away wasn't weakness, it was strength. It was you choosing your future over someone else's fear. When you decide to heal, you start rebuilding your relationship with yourself. You start seeing your emotional needs as valid, your boundaries as necessary, and your love as a gift, not something to be bartered for scraps of attention. The avoidant might miss you now, but if they haven't done the internal work to grow, then what they're really missing is your old self. The version of you that waited, reached out, tried harder. That version doesn't exist anymore. You've outgrown the space where you had to shrink in order to be tolerated. Protecting your peace means refusing to negotiate with emotional inconsistency. It means no longer accepting love that comes with conditions, silence, or withdrawal. It's about choosing relationships where you don't have to earn basic emotional safety. You deserve someone who doesn't flinch at your vulnerability, someone who meets your depth with their own, someone who doesn't make you question if you're too much or not enough. There's a difference between being missed and being chosen. Being missed is passive. Being chosen is intentional. When someone truly sees your worth, they don't keep you waiting. They don't return only when it's convenient or when they feel your absence. They choose you in the light, not just when they're lost in the dark. So let them miss you. Let them sit in the silence they created, but don't mistake their regret for readiness. You didn't heal just to go back to what you had to recover from. So if you've been wrestling with the sting of rejection and the confusion of being missed after the fact, remember this: your worth was never dependent on someone else's readiness. You offered love, depth, consistency, and they couldn't hold it, not because it wasn't valuable, but because they didn't know how to receive it. Now that your absence is louder than your presence once was, they might miss you. But their missing you doesn't obligate you to go back. Because real love doesn't find you when you shrink or chase. It finds you when you stand in your full truth, unshaken. Let them remember you. Let them miss you. But you move forward with grace, with clarity, and with the quiet power of someone who no longer settles for being almost chosen. You weren't too much. You were real. And one day, someone who's ready will thank you for being exactly that. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, and your ears today. Whether you're in the middle of letting go or already on the path of healing, I hope you carry this reminder with you. You are not here to chase someone into loving you. You are here to choose yourself every time someone else hesitates. Take what you've learned, stand taller for it, and remember, your story isn't over. It's just beginning again, stronger. Be kind to yourself. You're doing better than you think. Thank you and take care.